I'd like to report an illegal wilderness structure on the property line of Maple Ridge Estates. Unpermitted, unsafe, destroying our property values.
That's the complaint the HOA president filed with Piscataquis County Code Enforcement at 9:47 on a Tuesday morning in September. The structure she reported was my grandfather's 1947 hunting cabin. It has stood on the same spruce log footprint for 77 years, fully permitted, fully grandfathered, owned by the Beauchamp family since my great-grandfather homesteaded the land in 1898. The county code officer drove out, reviewed the file, and apologized for the inconvenience. The HOA president, watching from her porch 400 feet up the slope, smiled like she had won something. What that woman did not know was that the next phone call I made, to a retired Maine licensed land surveyor, was about to put 12 of her HOA's perimeter homes on the wrong side of a boundary line her husband's title insurance company had been hiding for 41 years. Tell me, what would you have done? The cabin has stood on the same patch of granite ledge above Indian Stream since 1947. It was built by my grandfather Cyrus Beauchamp the year he came home from the South Pacific with a steel pin in his hip and a bronze star he never showed anyone. He cut the spruce logs himself from his own woodlot. He notched them the old way, by axe, on the assumption that a cabin you build by hand in the woods you grew up in will outlive any cabin you ever pay somebody else to build for you. He was right. The cabin is 77 years old now. Every roof shingle has been replaced. Every floorboard has been refinished. The original spruce logs are exactly where Cyrus set them. My name is Granger Beauchamp. I'm 62 years old, a retired state forester with the Maine Forest Service after 33 years on the line, and the fourth generation of my family to live on this land. My wife, Adele, is 59, a retired chemistry teacher from the high school in Dover-Foxcroft, and she has been married to me for 38 years, 8 months, and most of the patience of 3 saints. We moved up to the cabin full-time 18 months ago, when we both finished work. We thought we were done with paperwork. We were wrong. We have one son. His name is Donovan. He is 34 years old, 6'3", dark-haired like his mother, a wildland firefighter out of Bend, Oregon. He fights fires for the Bureau of Land Management every summer and trains rookies every winter. He is, by every measurable metric, an extraordinary man. He has not spoken to me in 4 years. 4 years ago, Donovan came home for Thanksgiving and announced he was leaving the Forest Service entry-level position I had helped him into and was going to Oregon to fight fires. I had spent 2 years getting him that job. I had pulled favors. I had written letters. I had given him the kind of running start a father gives a son when he believes, foolishly, that his own road is the right road for everyone. I said the wrong things at the Thanksgiving table. He drove back to his apartment in Portland that night and did not come home for Christmas. He has not been back since. Adele tells me every Sunday evening that he will come back when he is ready, and that what I owe him until then is patience. I have been patient. It has been 4 years. The property is 180 acres of mixed spruce, fir, hemlock, and maple, with a half-mile of Indian Stream frontage and 1 small pond. The land was originally 320 acres, granted to my great-grandfather Asa Beauchamp as a homestead patent in 1898. Asa cleared a small farm on the upland in 1899 and set a granite stone at the southwest corner of his patent, on which he carved his initials and the year, A.B. 1898. The stone is still there. It is one of approximately 14,000 recorded witness stones in the state of Maine. In 2002, my father Lester divided the homestead into 2 parcels by family trust. He left the southern 180 acres, with the cabin, to me. The northern 140 acres he sold to a developer named Mortimer Crandall for what we thought at the time was a fair price. Mortimer Crandall built 50 houses on it. He called the development Maple Ridge Estates. He created an HOA. The HOA elected, in 2010, a president named Daphne Holcomb Quint. Daphne has been the HOA president for 14 years now. Her husband, Carver Holcomb Quint, owns Holcomb Title Services of Greenville, Maine, the title insurance agency that handled the original 2002 sale to Crandall. When Adele and I moved up here 18 months ago, Daphne came to introduce herself at the cabin twice. The first time she brought banana bread. The second time, she brought a clipboard. 3 weeks later, she filed her first county code enforcement complaint. We did not know yet what she was actually after. We figured it out on a Tuesday in September with one phone call. The county code enforcement officer was a man named Stetson Plord, mid-50s, gray at the temples, with the unhurried bearing of a man who has driven 110,000 miles of dirt road in Piscataquis County over the previous 20 years. He pulled into our gravel drive in a county pickup at 10:15 on a Tuesday morning. He got out with a clipboard, a handheld GPS, and a paper coffee cup from the IGA in Greenville. He recognized me from softball games at the Greenville Town Park in the 90s. Granger, long time. Stetson, what brings you out? Complaint filed Monday afternoon. Daphne Holcomb Quint. She says you have an illegal wilderness structure, unpermitted septic, and a non-conforming outbuilding on your property. I see. You want me to do the walkthrough, just to be square. Stetson, by all means, please come in. Adele had made coffee. Stetson took a mug. He walked the property with me for 45 minutes. He looked at the cabin permits, 7 of them, the oldest from 1947, the newest from 2019, all on file with the town of Beaver Cove in the state of Maine. He looked at the septic permit, issued 1981, renewed 2003, current. He looked at the small sauna I had built the previous summer, which sat under 50 square feet and required no permit under Maine state code. He looked at the woodshed Cyrus built in 1962. He took photos for the file. Then he sat at our kitchen table and wrote up a report that concluded, in very official-sounding language, that the property at 410 Forest Road was fully compliant with all relevant municipal, county, and state codes, and that the complaint should be marked unfounded. He left a copy of the report on our table. He stood up. He took his hat off. He looked out the kitchen window at the rooflines of Maple Ridge Estates, visible just over the ridge. Granger, I have to tell you, this is the 4th complaint that woman has filed against a non-HOA property in this county in the last 2 years. They have all been unfounded. I don't know what her endgame is, but if I were you, I'd start a folder. Stetson, I have already started the folder. He smiled, the slow smile of a man who has known me since I was a left fielder in a Sunday softball league. Good, he said. Welcome home. He drove out. Daphne Holcomb Quint, watching from her front porch 400 feet up the slope through a pair of expensive binoculars, did not wave. That afternoon I sat in the kitchen with Adele, and the report on the table between us. Adele, something's wrong up there. I know. That woman's first complaint isn't about a cabin she has a clear view of from her porch. She's after something else. What? I don't know yet, but I'd like to find out. I picked up the phone and called Wendell Tarbox. Wendell is 68 years old, a retired Maine licensed land surveyor. I have known since I started with the Forest Service in 1991. We have walked, between us, approximately 14,000 miles of Maine property lines. He spent the last 12 years of his career as the senior staff surveyor for the Maine Department of Conservation. He retired in 2018. He lives 40 miles south of here, in Milo. He picked up on the 3rd ring. Granger. Wendell, I need a favor. Walk a property line with me tomorrow. Whose? Mine, specifically the northern boundary, where the HOA development sits. There was a pause. Granger, how long have you suspected something? Until about 2 hours ago, nothing. Now I'm not sure. What changed? Code enforcement officer left me a hint. Stetson Plord. That man drops a hint, you take it. I'll be there at 7 a.m. He arrived at 6:53 on Wednesday morning in his old gray Ford, with a brass total station in a wooden case, a pair of laced leather boots, and a sandwich Adele had not yet offered him, but knew she would. We drank coffee on the porch for 10 minutes, then we walked. It took Wendell 43 minutes to find the witness stone. He found it under 14 years of leaf litter, in a tangle of low spruce, exactly 78 feet northwest of where the HOA's perimeter fence ran. He brushed the leaves off. He read the inscription, AB 1898. He looked up at me through the morning mist coming off Indian Stream. Granger, I know this stone. I marked this stone on a survey in 1997 for your father's tax appraisal. I logged it in the state survey database. Every Maine LLS who works north of Skowhegan has the location of this stone in their data. And Granger, the HOA's perimeter fence is on the wrong side of it, by approximately 240 feet. I sat down on the moss next to the stone. Wendell sat down beside me. We did not speak for about 4 minutes. Wendell, how many houses sit south of where the line actually runs? He pulled up the HOA plat on his tablet. He laid it over the recorded boundary description in his survey database. He let out a low, slow whistle. Granger, 12, maybe 13, their southern perimeter row. Backyards, septics, and at least 2 corners of actual structure. They're all sitting on you. I closed my eyes. I felt the moss under my hands. I felt the cold of the granite where my great-grandfather had carved his initials 126 years ago. I heard a loon call from somewhere out on the stream. Wendell, walk it again tomorrow. Bring your camera. Bring your GPS. Document every inch. You want this clean. I want this filed. He nodded. He stood up. He helped me up. We walked back to the cabin. Adele had the sandwich on the porch table by the time we got there. I will not tell you that I slept that night. I went out to the porch at 2:15 in the morning. The moon was the color of old whetstone. The forest was deep quiet, the kind of quiet you only get in northern Maine in September, when the loons have moved off the stream and the coyotes are working far up the ridge. I sat in my grandfather's wooden rocking chair, and I thought about 3 things. The first was that 12 families up the hill were about to have a very bad winter. The second was that I had spent 33 years walking property lines for the Forest Service, and that during those 33 years, I had personally signed off on the relocation of 17 rural property markers due to discovered error. Boundary errors are not, in themselves, the end of the world. The cover-up is what kills people. The third was Donovan. I did not know why I was thinking about Donovan at 2:15 on the porch in the moonlight, but I was. I was thinking about the year he was 9, when I took him out to walk the southern boundary of this exact property with a hand compass, and he asked me how we knew where the line was, and I told him about Ace's stone, and he had wanted to walk to it and touch it. We did. He had laid his hand on the carved letters and said, with the seriousness only 9-year-olds and federal judges achieve, that he was glad his great-great-grandfather had been a man who left signs behind. I sat on the porch for another hour. I went to bed at 3:30. I slept until 6. Wendell came back at 7:15 with his daughter Briar, who was also a Maine LLS, second-generation surveyor, the third tar box in 3 generations to do the work, and they walked the boundary line for 9 hours. They located 11 additional historical markers Asa Beecham had set in 1898 along the homestead's southern and eastern lines. They cross-referenced every marker against the state survey database. They took GPS coordinates to 4-centimeter accuracy. They photographed every stone. Briar Tarbox, who is 31 and built like a willow switch, hiked harder than her father and harder than me, and she found 2 stones the rest of us had walked past 3 times. At the end of the day, they sat at our kitchen table with a topographic map spread between them. Wendell said, Granger, filing the corrective survey is a state and county process. Once it's recorded, the corrected boundary becomes the legal boundary of record. Anyone who has been operating under the old boundary loses their assumed claim immediately. How long? Survey filing, 14 days. Recording, another 7. About 3 weeks before the HOA is officially on your land in the eyes of the county recorder. And before that, Granger, this conversation does not exist. Understood. You have a lawyer? I have one in Bangor, Estelle Beauregard. Good. Call her tomorrow. I called Estelle the next morning. She remembered me from a Forest Service easement case in 2008. She listened to my summary for 10 minutes without interrupting. Then she said, Mr. Beauchamp, I would like to take this case. I would also like you to do nothing, for 90 days. Don't post signs, don't confront her, don't speak to her. Let me research the title chain. Let me research her husband's agency. Let me build the picture. Yes, ma'am. Did anyone, at any point in the original 2002 sale, raise a question about the southern boundary. Not that I know of. I want to find that out. May I have permission to subpoena the title insurance file? Yes, ma'am. This may take a while. Estelle, it has taken 22 years already. I can wait 90 days. Meanwhile, Daphne kept escalating in her own predictable little ways. The second county complaint came in on Friday. She reported that I had unregulated firewood storage, 3 cords stacked behind the woodshed, exactly the amount any Maine homeowner stacks behind any Maine woodshed before October. Code enforcement marked it unfounded within 4 hours. The third complaint came in on the following Tuesday. She reported that Adele had harassed her at the IGA by allegedly making threatening eye contact in the dairy aisle. Adele had in fact been buying yogurt. She had not made eye contact with Daphne. She had not seen Daphne in the store. Adele added the complaint to a folder she had begun keeping in the kitchen drawer. Adele's folder, as it turned out, was the second most important folder in our house. The most important folder was the one Wendell had started in his truck. Daphne came to the cabin in person on a Thursday afternoon in late September. She did not bring banana bread this time. She came up the gravel drive in her white Lincoln Navigator, with 2 HOA board members in the passenger seats, a thin woman named Sybil Stancliffe and a heavy-set retired insurance executive named Bertram Wickham. They got out at the foot of our porch steps. Daphne was carrying a clipboard the size of a roof tile and wearing a coral linen blazer that did not match the September weather. Adele was in the kitchen. I was on the porch with a cup of coffee. I did not stand up. Mr. Beauchamp. Mrs. Holcomb Quint. We are here on behalf of the Maple Ridge Estates HOA. We have received reports of multiple property line violations from your parcel, including unauthorized brush clearing across the HOA's southern perimeter and possible encroachment by your sauna structure on community-maintained property. I sipped my coffee. Mrs. Holcomb Quint. The sauna sits 120 feet inside my parcel. The brush clearing along the HOA's southern perimeter was done by your own contractors in July, on what your HOA has been calling community-maintained property. Neither of those statements is accurate. That is a matter for our surveyor to determine. Have you hired a surveyor? We will, if necessary. Mrs. Holcomb Quint, I would invite you to please go hire one. Her jaw tightened. In the meantime, I am informing you that the HOA board has voted to conduct a perimeter walkthrough tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. to inspect the boundary maintenance line. We will be performing brush clearing along the property line at that time, including any vegetation that may be encroaching from your side. Mrs. Holcomb Quint, the property line is not where you think it is. I would advise against any clearing activity tomorrow. Mr. Beauchamp, we have been maintaining that property line for 14 years. We know exactly where it is. Mrs. Holcomb Quint, so do I. Please leave my porch. She did not leave immediately. She stood for about 15 seconds with her face set in the kind of expression I have seen on bull moose in October. Then she turned, walked back to the Navigator, and drove away. I went inside. Adele was at the counter, peeling potatoes. Adele, she said they're coming tomorrow to clear brush on what she thinks is the property line. Which is not the property line. Correct. What do you want to do? I want to film it. Where would you like me to set up? I love my wife. I have loved her for 38 years. I will tell you that the way she said, "Where would you like me to set up?" was the same tone she once used to ask me where I wanted to plant the lilac bush in 1991. It was the tone of a woman who has built a life with a man she trusts. Up the slope, behind the second hemlock. Bring the long lens, the big tripod, wear something gray. On it. The next morning we were in position by 6:30. The HOA's clearing crew arrived at 9:15. Daphne, Sybil, Bertram, a hired contractor in a yellow safety vest with a brush cutter, and a teenage HOA volunteer carrying a chainsaw he was not licensed to operate. They walked down the slope to a point that Daphne, gesturing with her clipboard, identified as the property line. They began clearing brush. They were standing approximately 210 feet south of where the line actually runs. They were on my land. Adele filmed the entire thing from the hemlock at 4K resolution, with a 300mm lens, time-stamped, GPS tagged, with audio. She did not move. She did not speak. She was, for the entire 98 minutes the crew was working, the calmest documentarian in the state of Maine. They left at 10:53. I called Wendell. I described what had happened. Wendell said, "Granger, they just performed unauthorized vegetation clearing on land owned by you. That, plus the witness stone you have not yet shown them, plus the corrective survey you have not yet filed, plus the title insurance file we have not yet subpoenaed. Granger, you are sitting on enough evidence to dissolve their board, recover damages, and trigger a federal title insurance investigation." "How long until we move?" Estelle said 90 days. "I can wait 90 days. I hung up. I sat on the porch with Adele. She had brewed a fresh pot of coffee. We did not say anything for a long time. Then she said, "Granger, it's time to call Donovan." I looked at her. She did not look back. She was watching the slope where the HOA crew had cleared a wide, raw scar through 14-year-old undergrowth on land that legally belonged to her husband. "He needs to know what's happening, and you need to talk to your son before this story becomes anything bigger than this porch." I thought about it for a long minute. Then I picked up the phone. The conversation with Donovan was the hardest 50 minutes of my year. He answered on the fourth ring. He did not recognize the number because he had not had me in his contacts for 4 years. He said, "This is Donovan," in the tone he uses on dispatch calls. I told him who I was. He went quiet for about 8 seconds. Then he said, "Dad, is Mom okay?" "She's fine. We're both fine. I'm calling because something has come up at the cabin that you should know about, and because I should have called you a long time before this." He let that sit. He did not fill the silence. He has my temperament. He waits. I told him about Daphne. I told him about Wendell. I told him about the witness stone. I told him about the brush clearing. I told him, as a forester to a wildland firefighter, what the next 90 days were going to look like. He listened the way he used to listen when he was 9, and I was teaching him to read a topographic map. At the end, he said, "Dad, I'd like to come home for Christmas this year, if that's okay with you, and Mom." I could not speak for about 4 seconds. "Donovan, that would be, yes, please." "Okay." "Okay." We hung up. I sat on the porch in the dark for a long time. Meanwhile, Estelle Beauregard had been very busy. By the end of October, she had subpoenaed the complete file from Holcomb Title Services, covering the 2002 sale to Mortimer Crandall. The file was, on the surface, routine: closing documents, title abstract, insurance commitment, standard exclusions. But Estelle, who had been a title attorney for 19 years before going into general practice, knew where to look. She found it in a 1983 internal memo. The memo was written by Carver Holcomb Quint's uncle, the previous owner of Holcomb Title Services, who had handled the original 1972 boundary survey on the Beauchamp homestead for an unrelated tax matter. The memo, addressed to file, noted that the 1972 surveyor had used the wrong control point, a 1947 utility marker instead of ASA's 1898 witness stone, and had consequently produced a southern boundary line that ran approximately 240 feet north of the actual recorded boundary. The memo concluded with the sentence, "Recommend correction at next family transaction. Notification to Beauchamp heirs deferred pending further review." There was no record that the Beauchamp heirs had ever been notified. In 2002, when Carver inherited the agency from his uncle and handled my father's sale of the northern parcel, the memo was in the file. Carver did not disclose it. He issued a title commitment based on the incorrect 1972 boundary. He sold a clean policy to Mortimer Crandall. Mortimer built 50 houses on land that included, on its southern perimeter, approximately 2.5 acres of Beauchamp property. Estelle read me the memo over the phone on a Friday afternoon in early November. "Granger, this is title insurance fraud, federal jurisdiction, Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, the Federal Mail Fraud Statute, and State Consumer Protection Law all apply. What about the HOA's boundary maintenance fee?" "Granger, the HOA has been collecting $250 a year per household from 50 households for 14 years, ostensibly for maintenance of a boundary line they did not own. That is $175,000 in collected fees. The disbursement records show it all went to Cedar Branch Land Services LLC, owned by Carver Holcomb Quint, sole member, registered 2010. I sat at my kitchen table and looked at Adele. Adele looked back. "Estelle," I said, "I think it's time we filed the corrective survey." "Granger, are you ready for what comes next?" I looked out the window at the southern slope where, 240 feet up, 12 perimeter homes of Maple Ridge Estates sat on land that had been mine since 1898. "Estelle, I have been ready since my grandfather built this cabin in 1947. He just didn't know it." The corrective survey was filed with the Piscataquis County Registry of Deeds at 9:43 on a Monday morning in mid-November. It was a 38-page document prepared by Wendell and Breyer Tarbox, signed and sealed by 2 Maine licensed land surveyors, and attached as Exhibit A to a formal notice of boundary correction, recorded under Estelle's signature. The filing was, by statute, public the moment it hit the recorder's desk. Within 24 hours, every title insurance company operating in Piscataquis County had a copy. Within 48 hours, the Maine Attorney General's office had received an anonymous tip about a 1983 internal memo and had opened a quiet preliminary inquiry into Holcomb Title Services. The tip was not anonymous. It was from Estelle. She likes to call them anonymous. I spent the next 3 weeks doing 3 things. First, I wrote letters. 12 letters, one to each of the homeowners on the HOA's southern perimeter row whose property, based on the corrected survey, was wholly or partially on my land. The letters were polite. They were drafted by Estelle. They explained, plainly and without judgment, what had happened, what the corrective survey had documented, and what each homeowner's options were. The options were 3. Option 1, quitclaim the encroached portion of land back to me at fair appraised value, with a quiet closing and a 30-year warranty deed against future dispute. Option 2, negotiate a long-term lease at fair market rate. Option 3, dispute the corrective survey at their own expense. 11 of the 12 homeowners called me within 3 days. Most of them were terrified. A few were angry. None of them, when I sat with them at my kitchen table for an hour, were angry at me by the end of the visit. The 12th homeowner did not call. The 12th homeowner was Daphne Holcomb Quint. Second, I met with the 11 homeowners as a group. I hosted them at the IGA Community Room in Greenville on the second Saturday in December. Adele baked 3 pies. Estelle came. Wendell came with his survey maps. Stetson Plord came in his official capacity as County Code Enforcement Officer. We sat around 3 folding tables under fluorescent light, and we walked the 11 homeowners through every single document. By the end of the meeting, all 11 had agreed to option 1. We negotiated an appraised value per parcel that worked out to $18,000 per household, payable to me in cash at closing in February. Third, Estelle filed 2 separate formal complaints, one with the Maine Bureau of Insurance regarding Holcomb Title Services' undisclosed material defect in the 2002 title commitment, and one with the Office of the Maine Attorney General regarding the HOA's boundary maintenance fee scheme. The state regulators responded within 10 days. The Bureau of Insurance opened a formal investigation. The Attorney General opened a parallel investigation. By the first week of December, federal investigators from the Department of Housing and Urban Development had requested copies of both files. While all of that was happening, Daphne Holcomb Quint did exactly what overconfident HOA presidents always do. She hired her own surveyor. His name was Linwood Garber. He was a Maine LLS out of Bangor. Wendell knew him from 40 years of state surveyor conferences. Linwood was paid $4,000 by the HOA General Fund to dispute the Beauchamp corrective survey. He walked the boundary on a snowy Wednesday morning in early December. He found Asa's witness stone in 12 minutes. He called Wendell that afternoon from the parking lot of the IGA in Greenville. "Wendell, I just walked the Beauchamp line. Your survey is clean. The HOA is sitting 238 feet over the line. I owe Daphne Holcomb Quint a phone call I'm not looking forward to." "Linwood, tell her gently." "Wendell, I have known that woman socially for 9 years. There is no gentle with that woman." He called her. She did not take it gently. She did, in fact, take it the worst possible way. She decided to destroy the witness stone. She came in the second week of December, when the first real snow was on the ground. I had not anticipated, in retrospect, that her response to Linwood Garber's findings would be to attempt the literal, physical destruction of the boundary marker. I had anticipated a lawsuit. I had anticipated a smear campaign. I had even briefly anticipated her trying to plant a different stone in a different place and claim it was the original. I had not anticipated a sledgehammer. But she did warn me, in her way. On a Tuesday morning in the first week of December, she posted an open letter to the Maple Ridge Estates neighborhood Facebook group, which Adele had been quietly monitoring through a friend's account for 3 months. The letter accused me, by name, of fabricating a so-called witness stone on community-maintained land in order to extort the homeowners of Maple Ridge Estates. The letter concluded with the sentence, "This community will not be held hostage by a stone an old man carved last summer." I will admit that line briefly bothered me. Asa Beauchamp carved his stone in 1898. He was 31 years old at the time. He has been dead since 1946. I added the post to Adele's folder. 2 days later, on Thursday morning, Daphne posted again. This post announced that the HOA had voted, at an emergency meeting nobody else had been notified of, to perform what she called a community boundary clarification action on the disputed property line on Saturday morning at 10 a.m. The post invited concerned neighbors to attend. Adele showed me the post. I called Estelle. I called Wendell. I called Stetson Pleward. By Friday evening, the following pieces were in place. Stetson had arranged for Sheriff's Deputy Maisie Hennigan to be on standby 5 miles down Forest Road, monitoring radio traffic from her cruiser. Wendell had installed a second high-resolution trail camera on the witness stone. Adele had pre-positioned her tripod, long lens, and gray jacket at the same hemlock she had used in September. I had pre-positioned myself at the second-floor window of the cabin, with a pair of military-grade binoculars Cyrus had carried out of the South Pacific in 1945. We waited. Daphne arrived at the witness stone at 10:03 Saturday morning. She brought 2 HOA board members, Sybil Stancliffe in a parka and Bertram Wickham in a wool coat, and a sledgehammer. Sybil was carrying a shovel. Bertram was carrying a battery-powered angle grinder. Daphne herself was carrying the sledgehammer, two-handed, the way somebody who has never used a sledgehammer carries one. She was wearing a teal puffer coat over white snow pants. She approached the stone with the expression of a woman who has rehearsed a moment in her head for 48 hours. She raised the sledgehammer. She struck the stone. The stone is approximately 200 pounds of granite that has been sitting in the same patch of duff since 1898. It did not move. The sledgehammer rebounded with the kind of dull ringing that comes back through the handles into a person's wrist bones. Daphne yelped. She struck again. The carved inscription, AB 1898, chipped along the bottom of the B. About a 1/4 inch of granite came off. She struck a third time. The sledgehammer head loosened on its handle. Sybil said something I could not hear. Daphne handed the sledgehammer to Bertram and ordered him to use the angle grinder. He fired it up. He held it to the stone. Sparks flew. The grinder bit into the inscription. About 6 inches of the carved letters disappeared in a shower of granite dust before the grinder seized on a piece of embedded quartz and the battery cut out. Sybil then began to dig with the shovel. They dug for 23 minutes. They did not, of course, dig the stone out. The stone has roots in the bedrock under the duff. They removed approximately 30 square feet of frozen forest floor around it. They damaged exposed surface granite. They scattered duff and roots in a small ant colony. The trail cameras recorded all of it in 2 angles. Adele filmed it from the hemlock in 4K. I called Deputy Hennigan from the cabin. She arrived 11 minutes later. She arrested Daphne Holcomb Quint at the witness stone at 11:08 a.m. on a felony charge of criminal destruction of a recorded survey marker under Title 17A of the Maine Revised Statutes, Section 716. The charge carries a maximum sentence of 5 years and a fine of up to $10,000. Sybil Stancliffe and Bertram Wickham were also arrested. They did not resist. Daphne, on the way to the cruiser, told Deputy Hennigan that she was going to sue her, the Sheriff's Department, the state of Maine, and the senile old man behind this entire conspiracy. Deputy Hennigan, who is 38 years old and has heard worse, nodded politely and read her Miranda rights with the calm cadence of a woman who has done it 900 times. The cruiser left the property at 11:31. Adele came out of the hemlock. She had been filming for 92 minutes. She handed me the SD card. I handed her the binoculars. Granger, I think we're done now. Almost, sweetheart, almost. That evening, after the deputy had taken her statement and Wendell had walked through the trail camera footage one more time at the kitchen table, Adele sat down beside me on the porch with 2 mugs of coffee and the cordless phone. The light through the spruce was the color of old pewter. The first stars were already over Indian Stream. She did not say anything. She did not need to. She put the phone in my hand. I dialed Donovan. He picked up on the second ring. Dad. Donovan, it's me. Can you come home now? He was on a plane out of Redmond by Sunday afternoon. Donovan flew in on the Sunday afternoon following Daphne's arrest. He came up the long curve of Forest Road in a rented Subaru Outback with Oregon plates, slowed at our gate the way he had slowed at our gate every time he had come home in the 17 years he had been driving, and pulled into the gravel turnaround beside the cabin. He got out wearing a Carhartt jacket I recognized from Christmas of 2018, work boots, and a beard he had not worn the last time I had seen his face. He was carrying a small canvas duffel and a paper sack from the bakery in Dover Foxcroft. Adele met him in the gravel before I could get off the porch. She did not say anything. She put both her arms around her son, and she held him for a long time. He held her back the way grown men hold their mothers when they have been away for 4 years. I came down off the porch. Donovan looked at me over Adele's shoulder. Hi, Dad. Hi, Donovan. That was the conversation. We had 4 years of unsaid things between us, and we have spent the 11 months since trying to work through them, slowly, the way a man cuts firewood, one round at a time, with a sharp axe, in no particular hurry. The local paper, the Piscataquis Observer, ran the witness Stone arrest story on Monday morning under the headline HOA President Arrested for Destruction of 1898 Survey Marker. By Tuesday afternoon, the Bangor Daily News had picked it up. By Wednesday, the Portland Press Herald. By Thursday, a producer at WCSH6 had called Estelle for an interview. Estelle declined the interview on my behalf and put the producer on the phone with the Maine Bureau of Insurance. By Friday, Carver Holcomb Quint had been indicted in federal court for title insurance fraud, mail fraud, and 3 counts of falsification of federally regulated insurance disclosures. He was arraigned on the following Monday morning at the federal courthouse in Bangor. He was released on bond. His title insurance license was suspended within 48 hours. The community meeting I had been planning for the 11 HOA homeowners on the encroached perimeter row was held on the second Saturday in December at the IGA community room in Greenville. 11 of them came. 2 of their spouses came. Adele baked 4 pies. Wendell brought his maps. Estelle brought the quitclaim deeds, prepared and ready for signature. Stetson Plord came as the county's neutral observer. Donovan sat in the back row in his Carhartt jacket, watching. I stood up at 1:03 on a Saturday afternoon, and I told them the story of this land. I told them about Asa, and about his stone, and about the 1898 patent, and about my father's 2002 sale, and about the 1983 memo Carver's uncle had filed and never disclosed. I told them about the 1972 surveyor's error, and the 2002 closing, and the 14 years of boundary maintenance fees that had funded a shell LLC. I told them about Linwood Garber, who had walked the line as a neutral surveyor and confirmed every inch of Wendell's findings. Then I told them what I was offering. Every one of you, I said, will sign a quitclaim deed for the encroached portion of your parcel at the appraised value of $18,000. I will hold the deed for 30 days while you arrange financing. After 30 days, the deed will be recorded, and your parcel will be made whole and legal in the eyes of the state of Maine. In addition, I am directing that a portion of the proceeds from these 11 transactions, $55,000 total, will be paid into a refund pool for all 50 households of Maple Ridge Estates, representing the boundary maintenance fee that has been collected illegally for the last 14 years. The room was very quiet. A retired schoolteacher named Verity Wycliffe, in the second row, was already crying quietly. I looked at Donovan in the back. He nodded once. I looked at Adele. She nodded once. I looked at Estelle. Estelle handed me the first deed. The 11 homeowners came up to the front table one at a time. They signed their deeds. They shook my hand. 7 of them hugged Adele. 3 of them hugged me. Verity Wycliffe held both my hands and said, in a voice the whole room heard, "Mr. Beauchamp, thank you for not making this ugly when you had every right to." I could not speak for a moment. Then I said, "Mrs. Wycliffe, my grandfather built this cabin to last beyond him. I am trying to live in it that way." She nodded. She sat down. The 11th homeowner was the last to come up. His name was Roy Crispin. He was 74, a retired Bath Iron Works machinist, and he had been one of Daphne Holcomb Quint's most vocal supporters on the HOA board for 9 years. He stopped at the table. He looked at Estelle. He looked at the deed. He looked at me. Then he set both his hands on the table and said, quietly, so that only the front rows heard, "Mr. Beauchamp, I have been a fool. I want you to know that." He signed the deed. I shook his hand. Adele, who has been observing fools for as long as she has been married to one, gave him a tight little nod that meant we are not finished, but we are starting. The meeting adjourned at 2:45. Outside, in the IGA parking lot, 2 TV vans were already pulling in. The legal aftermath unfolded over the next 9 months, in the slow, methodical way Maine handles its own. Daphne Holcomb Quint pled, in February, to 1 felony count of destruction of a survey marker and 2 misdemeanor counts of conspiracy and trespass. She served 14 months at the Maine Correctional Center in Wyndham. She lost the HOA presidency, the Lincoln Navigator, and the social standing in Maple Ridge Estates that had been the only thing she had ever really owned. Carver Holcomb Quint pled, in April, to 3 federal counts of title insurance fraud and mail fraud. He served 31 months at FCI Devons in Massachusetts. Holcomb Title Services of Greenville was dissolved by court order. The Maine Bureau of Insurance permanently revoked his title insurance license in May. Cedar Branch Land Services LLC was dissolved in March. The seized assets, approximately $193,000 in bank balances, were liquidated and distributed back to the 50 households of Maple Ridge Estates as restitution for the 14 years of boundary maintenance fees. The 11 quitclaim deeds were recorded the second week of February. Each homeowner paid $18,000 at closing. The total of $198,000 passed through Estelle's trust account to a new fund Adele and I established with the help of a small, non-profit attorney in Bangor. We called it the Beauchamp Family Land Trust. The trust funds professional survey work for low-income, rural Maine landowners who suspect they have a boundary issue but cannot afford the $4,000 to $8,000 a Maine licensed surveyor charges to walk a line. The trust pays the survey fee. The landowner pays nothing. Wendell Tarbox came out of retirement to run the surveying. Briar Tarbox does the heavy field work. In the last 10 months, they have walked 22 property lines for 22 families across Piscataquis and Penobscot counties. They have corrected 6 material boundary errors. One of those corrections returned a half-acre of an old farm to an 83-year-old widow named Honora Pickett, whose family had been quietly losing the same half-acre to a neighbor's slow fence creep for 40 years. Honora brought me a pumpkin pie the day the corrective survey was filed. She was leaning on a cane, carved from the same hickory her late husband had cleared off the half-acre in 1968. She set the pie on my kitchen table. She did not cry. She said only, "My Wilbur would have liked you." Then she made me promise to come to her birthday in March. I have not stopped thinking about that pie. I went to the birthday. I brought Adele. I brought Donovan. Honora cut us each a slice of cake that was older than I was. The new Maple Ridge Estates HOA was formed under fresh bylaws in March. Verity Wycliffe was elected president. She has not issued a single frivolous violation notice in 8 months. The boundary maintenance fee line item is gone from the dues. The southern perimeter of the development is, finally, on the right side of Ace's stone. The stone itself was reset into the bedrock by a small crew from the Maine Survey Association in April. The damaged inscription was carefully restored by a stonemason out of Skowhegan named Iona Cresswell, who does headstone repair as her main line of work. A new brass cap, certified by the association, was set into the top of the stone. It identifies the stone as a historic Maine survey marker, originally placed by Asa Beauchamp in 1898, vandalized in 2024, restored in 2025. There is a small plaque next to it now. It reads, "Witness stones outlive the people who try to move them." Donovan stayed in Maine through the summer. He took a temporary assignment with the Maine Forest Service, helping coordinate the wildfire crew out of Old Town, working under a district supervisor I had trained in 1997. In August, he brought home a woman from Oregon named Solveig Olstadter, a fellow wildland firefighter who has the steady eyes of a person who has run toward a lot of fires, and the quiet humor of a person who knows how to live with somebody who runs toward fires. Adele approved of her within 40 minutes. I approved of her within 12. They are talking about buying a house in Dover Foxcroft next spring. Donovan has not said the word permanent yet, neither have I. We are both, in our quiet way, working up to it. The cabin is still standing. The witness stone is still standing. The forest is quiet at night, except for the loons on Indian Stream. Last weekend, Adele and I sat on the porch with Donovan and Solveig at sunset. The light through the spruce was the color of old brass. Adele bumped my shoulder with hers. "Granger, your grandfather would be proud." I thought about Cyrus, who had cut these logs by hand in 1947, and Asa, who had carved his initials in granite in 1898, and my father, Lester, who had taught me to walk a property line at 6 years old, with a hand compass and a paper map. "He'd be prouder," I said, "of the trust." She nodded. We sat with the loons until the light went. "If you have made it this far, do me one small favor. If you own a piece of family land, 5 acres, 50 acres, 500, and you have never had it surveyed, get it surveyed. Hire a licensed land surveyor in your state. Walk the line. Find your stones. The most important paragraph in your deed may be the one only a surveyor can read. And if you want to see next week's case, the HOA treasurer who tried to seize a Korean War veteran's pickup and ended up in federal court, make sure you're subscribed. We post a new story every week. I'll see you on the next one.
What really happened here is simpler than the indictment makes it look. Granger Beauchamp did not win because he was right. He won because he knew where his great-grandfather had set a stone. For 14 years, an HOA had quietly built itself 240 feet onto land that did not belong to it. And the title insurance company that should have caused the error has quietly hidden the memo that flagged it. None of it would have ever been discovered if a small-town HOA president had not filed a frivolous complaint against a quiet retired forager. The lesson here is worth saying out loud. If you own family land, walk it. File your stones. Hire a surveyor. The most expensive paragraph in your deed is the one nobody has bothered to verify against the ground. If you ever had an HOA try to push a boundary off your family's land, drop a comment and tell us. And if you want to see next week's case, the HOA treasurer who tried to see a Korean War veteran's pickup and ended up in federal court, make sure you subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.